Let me just start off by saying that if we're sharing an elevator, we do not need to become best friends. We do not need to go out and get matching tattoos. I don't want to see pictures of your ugly children either. I just want to get to my floor and get off. I don't understand human behavior nowadays. We're just riding an elevator together. We're not going to war. We didn't have an epic gaming match as teammates. This is just an elevator. I don't understand it. Anyways, I'm getting off topic here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about something that completely flew over my head, and that has a lot to do with the fact that I don't really collect NECA action figures. Therefore, I didn't really pay attention to this news. But for those of you guys that do collect NECA and just keep up to date with all of the action figure news that happens in the community, I'm sure you will have already heard about this. But essentially what transpired over, I would say, the last couple of weeks is that all of these Walmart Con exclusive NECA action figures have all of a sudden gone from being Walmart exclusive to just being sold by multiple different retailers. Now, I know some of you guys might be wondering why that's an issue or why I would choose to talk about this. Well, I think it ties back into a lot of what's been happening in the action figure community, or I should say on the business sides of, collectibles. I feel like it's very important to talk about it, and I do feel like it could eventually be something that's pretty bad for the collectible community. On the surface, it sounds like, hey, we're going to get multiple chances at some of these figures. Why would it be bad for collectors? Well, my take basically boils down to the idea that some of these OMs, some of these retailers just don't have the capability to move action figures anymore. Now, just an FYI, just to give you guys an example of some of the figures that have moved from just being collector cons to being wider releases. You have, for example, that Last Ronin Casey Jones. You have that Inferno Ghostface, which is just an alternate version of Ghostface with a flamethrower. And then you have the War Duke from the Dungeons and Dragons action figure line, and I believe this is that retro carded version. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not sure if these are the only figures that have moved from being Walmart Collector Con exclusives to just being wider releases, but these are just like three perfect examples of figures that have gone and made the transition. But let me remind you guys, this is Walmart. This is one of the biggest chains in the United States. I would feel that they have no need for any of these smaller retailers to come in and pick up some merchandising that's supposed to be an exclusive to them. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, they had done this previously, multiple different retailers. Like if it was a GameStop exclusive, they would allow other fan channel retailers to pick up some of the merchandising, some of the product, and kind of take a little bit of that weight off their shoulders, but never to this extent, never to this degree. As I said, GameStop is relatively small. Their stores in person have been dwindling more and more, and a lot of their sales, at least from what I'm hearing from employees or just people in general, is that a lot of their sales are online. So I can completely understand if GameStop makes that shift or that transition to having more like, maybe a Big Bad Toy Store or an Entertainment Earth come in there and help out to move a lot of this inventory, especially if they don't feel confident that the product or the action figure is going to sell. But to have a Walmart do it, I think it's definitely a little bit of a red flag. Now, I know this is not necessarily like directly tied to McFarlane. I don't think that any of these companies are talking behind closed doors, but I think it does tie into what is happening with McFarlane indirectly. We just saw him start to rein in how many figures he decides to release for pre-orders. Now, obviously, pre-orders are usually just like the tip of the iceberg. There's usually a lot of inventory in person, but the pre-orders are it's a good barometer to have an idea of how many action figures are going to be sold. And recently, McFarlane has definitely been cutting down on the amount of action figures that he's releasing, and a lot of the OMs have demonstrated this through their websites. The pre-orders are selling out, and now we see something very similar happen with Walmart, where their confidence is waning. Now, obviously, NECA has always been kind of like a forgotten about line. It's not as popular, at least in my personal opinion, as McFarlane and Hasbro, which usually take up quite a bit of an aisle, whereas NECA is kind of thrown into the electronics. And I've seen even Walmarts go away from selling NECA. They just don't sell them all together. So it just depends on which OM you're going to. But for the most part, it's a little bit harder to find NECA in person. A lot of the sales happen online. Obviously, Entertainment Earth and Big Bad toy store have them. But I go to, for example, Best Buy used to carry a lot of NECA, and in person they're going away from it. You might have like a figure here or there. Same thing with Walmart. There may be some in stock at certain Walmarts. Target, I think, is the only retailer that continues to have NECA inventory in stock, but I think it's dwindling the further we go into this particular year. And I think going into next year, we could potentially see NECA have an even smaller presence at a lot of these retailers. And I think that's just another indication of the collector community really speaking out with their wallets. They see that a lot of the prices are rising, a lot of these exponentially, and collectors are just not purchasing or pre-ordering as much as they were maybe in previous years. I feel like the last few years have been a time of excess. We have seen action figures hitting insane discounts, and I feel like OEMs are starting to react to this, but instead of them deciding to maybe lower their prices or just add more value to their figures, they're just deciding to produce less of these. And I think, like I said, in the long term, this could have very harmful effects for some collectors. And I know I've mentioned this previously in another video, but I'll include myself in those collectors that just don't have their phone next to them at all times. Sometimes we're working, we're busy with life, we don't have a computer right next to us 24/7, and so some of those pre-order windows are extremely small nowadays, and I believe they're going to get smaller and smaller, especially from Hasbro and McFarlane. We've already seen that in the last previous few waves from these OEMs, and I think that's just going to be a trend that continues down the stretch. So hopefully I'm wrong, but I think this is a trend that we're going to see a lot from different OEMs, not just from McFarlane and Hasbro. We're now starting to see it from NECA, where a lot of these big chains just don't feel comfortable having a ton of collectibles to move, and they just don't feel confident to be able to pick them up on them for themselves. I believe times are changing, and collectors are just prioritizing and just getting a little bit more picky with what it is that they purchase. And essentially, this is the reaction from the OEMs. It's a double-edged sword because, yes, officially you will only be buying exactly what it is that you're very interested in, and so I think it'll help your budget overall. But at the same time, a lot of us that are like in-person collectors that just love purchasing stuff in store, we're going to be left out to dry, just because, like I said, most of the inventory, most of the stock is going to be flying off the shelves in form of pre-orders, and I feel like they're just not going to stock enough in person. But only time will tell if this is right or wrong. I just wanted to bring this entire situation to the community's attention. And honestly, I don't know whether this is all good or bad or just somewhere in between, but I feel like it's just a trend that is going to continue down the road, and it could affect the community as a whole. But let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know your personal opinion. As I said, this is kind of just a little bit of a ramble, but I just wanted to bring this to the forefront and really have you guys pay attention to what's happening with a lot of the OEMs. And I definitely believe that there will be a long-lasting effect on this entire ordeal. But as I said, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening to me ramble on for like 10 minutes. I really appreciate it. And yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Stay tuned. We have a ton of content coming at you guys. Stay safe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.